Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into something, that I think we all probably encounter more than we'd like to. Ethical dilemmas at work.
Yeah.
We've got some really fascinating source material to help us kind of unpack this whole tricky area.
Yeah.
Excerpts from The Conscience Code by G. Richard Schell.
Great book.
It's packed with research and real-world stories and practical advice that I think will really help us to, first of all, just recognize when we're in the middle of one of these ethical conflicts.
Right.
Then how to make decisions that are based on our values and maybe even, become the kind of leaders who inspire others to do the same.
Yeah, it's a really, I think it's a really interesting book.
Yeah.
Because Schell brings this, a real interesting mix of academic expertise.
Yeah.
But also personal experience to the table.
Oh, yeah.
He was raised in a Marine Corps family.
Wow.
Where, values like duty and character and responsibility were just deeply ingrained.
Oh, wow.
And he kind of weaves these personal insights into his analysis of real-world ethical challenges,
Yeah.
a lot of which are drawn straight from, his own MBA students.
I love that. And the stories that he shares are really eye-opening.
They are.
Like, remember that anecdote about the young consultant
Oh, yeah.
who was pressured into doing sexual favors for a client?
Yeah. Tough stuff.
Or the analyst who was told to create fake client lists to secure venture funding?
Oh, yeah.
It's a stark reminder that these ethical dilemmas aren't just, something that's happening in some far-off corporate world.
No.
They can pop up anywhere.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Anytime.
Yeah. And what's really, I think, insightful about the book is how Schell helps us understand the external pressures
Right.
that can lead even well-intentioned people down a slippery ethical slope.
Right.
He uses this acronym PAIRS to categorize these pressures.
I love a good acronym.
It's so helpful, right?
It is.
Peers, authority, incentives, role expectations, and systems.
Okay, so pairs.
Yeah.
Got it.
Have you ever felt pressured to go along with something at work even though you just felt like,
Oh, totally.
this isn't right?
All the time.
Yeah, that peers pressure in action.
Yeah, for sure. I remember when I was working on a project one time and everyone was pushing for this quick and dirty solution that would cut corners ethically.
Right.
And I felt so uncomfortable speaking up,
Yeah.
but I did in the end.
Good for you.
It wasn't easy,
Yeah.
but it definitely felt like the right thing to do.
And that just speaks to the power of having even a single true partner,
Right.
someone who shares your values, is willing to stand with you.
For sure.
Schell draws on some fascinating research here,
Yeah.
including the chilling story of Reserve Police Battalion 101 during World War II.
Oh, God.
These were ordinary German men who ended up participating in truly horrific acts.
Yeah.
Many of them driven by this pressure to conform to the group.
Right.
But then you contrast that with Ash's conformity experiments,
Right.
which show how the presence of just one dissenting voice can totally break that spell of conformity.
It's like having that one person who's on your side gives you the courage to stand your ground.
Exactly.
Even when it feels like everybody else is against you.
Exactly. And another pressure that can be just incredibly powerful is authority.
Ooh, yeah.
Schell highlights the Milgram experiment, where ordinary people were willing to inflict pain on others
Right.
simply because an authority figure told them to.
It's a disturbing experiment.
It is a sobering reminder of how easily we can be swayed by someone in a position of power,
Right.
even when we know that what they're asking us to do is wrong.
Yeah, that one always gets me thinking, what would I do in that situation?
Right.
It's so easy to think that you would be the one to resist.
Right.
But, the reality is authority can be a very persuasive force.
Absolutely.
Have you ever felt that pressure from authority at work? And if so, how did you handle it?
I think we've all probably experienced that to some degree.
Yeah.
It's really about recognizing those moments and finding ways to assert your own values,
Right.
even when it's uncomfortable.
Yeah. And then there's the pressure of incentives.
Ooh, yes.
Think about the Houston Astros sign stealing scandal.
Oh, yeah.
It started as this relatively minor infraction, but it quickly escalated into this full-blown ethical disaster,
Right.
driven by this intense pressure to win at all costs.
Yeah.
It's a perfect example of how incentives, especially when they're tied to performance and rewards,
Right.
can really distort our judgment and lead us down a slippery slope.
Absolutely. And sometimes that pressure comes from the role itself.
Oh, interesting.
Those unspoken expectations about how you're supposed to behave.
Right.
One of the most powerful illustrations of this is the Stanford Prison Experiment.
Right.
Remember in that study, students were randomly assigned to be either guards or prisoners
Right.
in this simulated prison environment.
Yeah.
And what's just shocking is how quickly the guards, even though these were just ordinary college students,
Right.
adopted this abusive behavior towards the prisoners.
It's wild.
It really shows how powerful situational factors can be.
Yeah.
You know, if you're put in a role where certain behaviors are expected,
Right.
it can be incredibly difficult to resist, even if those behaviors go against your personal values.
So true. And finally,
Yes.
Shell talks about the influence of systems.
Yes, systems are so important.
He uses the example of Best Buy's CEO who failed to report an ethical violation
Right.
because the company's system lacked clear accountability mechanisms.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that even with good intentions, it can be incredibly difficult to do the right thing if the system itself is flawed.
It's true.
A well-designed system, on the other hand, can actually encourage ethical behavior
Exactly.
by promoting transparency and accountability and clear ethical guidelines.
Absolutely.
Like, you can have all the personal integrity in the world,
Right.
but if you're operating within a system that rewards unethical behavior
Right.
or makes it hard to speak up,
Yeah.
your chances of staying on the straight and narrow are drastically reduced.
Yeah, you're swimming upstream.
So we've explored these really powerful external pressures. But now I'm curious to delve into the internal resources that we can draw on
Yes.
when we're faced with those really tricky situations.
Absolutely.
What does Shell have to say about that?
Let's dive in.
Welcome back to the deep dive.
Yeah.
We're continuing our exploration of the conscience code and how to navigate this ethical minefield
Right.
of the workplace.
Yeah.
We just discussed those powerful external pressures, the
Yeah.
pairs,
Yeah.
that can make it so tough to stay true to your values.
Yeah.
But now let's kind of shift gears a little bit and explore what Shell calls our internal resources.
Right.
Those qualities and strategies that can help us hold the line
Exactly.
when things get really tough.
Yeah.
So what are some of those?
Well, it's fascinating how Shell kind of weaves together these different perspectives.
Yeah.
You know, the external pressures and then the internal resources.
Yeah.
He starts with character.
Okay.
You know, that fundamental sense of who we are and what we stand for.
Right.
And he shares this really inspiring story about Keenan Lowe,
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
who was a, football coach who disarmed a student who'd brought a gun to school.
Yeah.
Lowe put himself at risk to protect others.
Yeah.
You know, it was just such a powerful testament to how character can reveal itself in these moments of crisis.
It's a really moving story. And what I thought was so interesting was that Lowe had actually made a mistake earlier that day,
Right.
something that was really weighing on his mind.
Right.
And it was almost like he was driven to redeem himself,
Right.
to do something truly heroic.
Yeah.
It makes you think about how our past experiences, even our mistakes,
Yeah.
can really shape how we respond to ethical challenges.
It's true.
Yeah.
You know, our past shapes our present.
Yeah.
And those moments of crisis can really reveal our true character.
Right.
But Shell goes beyond just character,
Okay.
and he explores the role of personality. He
Interesting.
dives into the big 5 personality traits,
Oh, yeah.
highlighting conscientiousness as the trait that's most closely linked to ethical conduct. Conscientious people tend to be organized, responsible,
Yeah.
dutiful qualities
Yeah.
that really help them stick to their values,
Right.
even when they're facing pressure.
It makes me wonder, can we actually develop those traits?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Or are we just stuck with the personality we're born with?
Yeah. Shell actually dives into that.
Okay.
He suggests strategies for developing those qualities.
So interesting.
But he also emphasizes the importance of understanding our own conflict management style.
Right.
You know, some of us are natural advocates, ready
Yeah.
to stand up and fight for what we believe in.
Yeah.
Others are more inclined to be problem solvers,
Uh-huh.
seeking collaborative solutions
Right.
that work for everyone involved.
Yeah.
And then there are those who tend to avoid conflict altogether,
Yeah.
hoping it'll just go away on its own.
Yeah. Just hoping it'll magically disappear.
Exact.
I think I'm probably somewhere between advocate and problem solver.
Yeah.
I definitely don't shy away from conflict. But I also try to find solutions that address everyone's concerns.
I think that's a good approach,
It's interesting to think about how these different styles might play out
right?
in an ethical dilemma.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's not about saying that one style is better than another.
Right.
It's really about self-awareness,
Yeah.
understanding your own tendencies
Yeah.
and how they might influence your response
Right.
in a pressure-filled situation.
Yeah.
And then there's the concept of locus of control.
Right.
Shell explains how people with an internal locus of control
Okay.
believe they have the power to influence events and outcomes,
Right.
while those with an external locus of control feel more like, things are happening to them,
Yeah.
that they're at the mercy of outside forces.
Right. I can definitely see how having that belief in your own ability to make a difference would be crucial
Absolutely.
in an ethical dilemma.
It's huge.
If you feel like you're just a pawn in the game,
Right.
you're less likely to speak up
Exactly.
to challenge the status quo.
Yeah.
Even when you know something is wrong.
It's about feeling empowered to act,
Right. Yeah.
to take ownership of the situation,
Right.
rather than succumbing to that sense of helplessness.
So we've got character, personality,
Mm-hmm.
and the sense of agency,
Right.
all internal resources that we can tap into.
Absolutely.
But what about some practical strategies
Right.
for navigating those ethical minefields?
That's where Shell's CLIP framework comes in.
Right. The CLIP framework, that's where things start to get really tactical.
Yeah.
I remember this being one of the most useful parts of the book.
Cool, for sure.
So remind me, what does CLIP stand for again?
So it stands for consequences, loyalties, identity, and principles.
Okay, got it.
And Shell uses this real-world case study, Nina's bribery dilemma,
Right.
to show how we can apply this framework.
Okay.
So Nina's working for a foundation in Africa,
Okay.
and she needs to get medical supplies into the country.
Right.
But she runs into this snag.
Uh-oh.
A local official is demanding a bribe to clear the shipment.
Ethical dilemma.
Right, that short-term good versus the long-term consequences.
Totally. If she pays the bribe, the supplies get through.
Right,
But she's also feeding a corrupt system.
exactly.
Yeah.
Tough call.
Tough call.
And that's where CLIP comes in.
Okay.
So first, Nina has to consider the consequences.
Right.
Not just the immediate outcome,
Right.
but the potential ripple effects.
Yeah.
Will paying this bribe lead to more demands in the future?
Right.
Will it undermine the foundation's credibility?
Yeah.
Then there's the question of loyalties. Who does Nina owe her allegiance to?
Yeah.
The foundation, the people they serve, her own personal values.
Yeah. And sometimes those loyalties can be in conflict.
Absolutely.
It's not always clear cut
Right.
who or what should take precedence.
Exactly.
Right.
And then there's the comment of identity.
Okay.
How does Nina see herself?
Right.
Is she someone who compromises her values
Right.
for the sake of expediency?
Yeah.
Or is she someone who holds firm even when it's difficult?
Right. It's a question of integrity, right?
Yeah, aligning your actions with your sense of self.
Right.
And finally, there are the principles at play.
Okay.
Bribery is generally illegal
Right.
and considered unethical.
Right.
But are there exceptions?
Right.
Are there times when breaking the rules might be justified?
Ooh, good question.
It's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
And Shell really encourages us to think critically about those gray areas,
Right.
not just blindly following the rules.
Right. It's about having a framework for making those tough calls.
Exactly.
A way to weigh the different factors and come to a decision that aligns with your values.
Absolutely.
But even with a clear decision,
Yeah.
there's still the challenge of taking action.
Right.
And that's where Shell's 7-step process for having persuasive ethical conversations comes in.
It's one thing to know what's right,
Yeah.
but it's another thing entirely to convince others
Right.
to see your perspective and act accordingly. And those 7 steps provide a roadmap
Yeah.
for navigating those difficult conversations.
So it starts with connecting to your own motivation.
Yes.
Why are you speaking up?
Right.
What values are at stake? And why are they worth fighting for
Exactly.
if you don't have that inner fire,
Right.
that conviction that you're doing the right thing?
Yeah.
It's going to be so much harder to persuade others.
It's about authenticity.
Right.
Conveying your passion and your commitment
Right.
to the issue.
And then Shell reminds us of the powers too.
Yes.
Finding allies who share your concerns
Exactly.
and are willing to stand with you.
Absolutely.
Remember Mike and Peter,
Oh, yeah.
those marketing students
Uh-huh.
who faced an ethical dilemma
Right.
with a recruiter
Yeah.
who'd badmouthed their university?
Totally.
Together, they came up with this strategy to hold the recruiter accountable
Right.
while protecting their company's reputation.
Exactly. It's a great example of how collaboration
Right.
can amplify your voice
Yeah.
and increase your chances of success.
But even with allies,
Yeah.
you need to be strategic about who you target.
Right.
Shell emphasizes the importance of identifying the decision maker, the
Absolutely.
person who actually has the authority to make a change.
Right.
And once you've got your target,
Yeah.
you need to assess your credibility.
Yes.
How do they see you?
Right.
Do they respect your judgment? Do they
Right.
trust your motives? It's
It's-
not what can you do to build that credibility.
It's about understanding the dynamics of power
Right.
and influence within your organization.
Right.
And then you need to consider the interest and beliefs
Right.
of your target decision maker.
Yeah.
What motivates them?
Right.
What are their goals?
Mm-hmm.
And how can you frame your argument
Yes.
in a way that aligns with their interests?
Totally.
If you come across as self-righteous or judgmental,
Right.
you're less likely to get their buy-in.
You got to meet them where they are and make a compelling case for why your proposal is in their best interest,
Right.
both ethically and practically.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, there's the actual conversation.
Right.
Articulating your arguments clearly,
Uh-huh.
listening attentively to their concerns,
Yeah.
finding common ground.
It's not about lecturing or winning a debate.
No.
It's about engaging in dialogue.
Right.
That hopefully leads to a shared understanding
Yes.
and a commitment to action.
Right.
And that commitment is more likely to stick if it's tied to some tangible consequences.
Right.
What do they stand to lose if they back out?
Uh-huh.
Or what do they stand to gain by following through?
It's about aligning incentives,
Yeah.
creating a sense of accountability.
Exactly.
So we've got this great framework for making decisions,
Right.
a roadmap for having those tough conversations.
Yeah.
But sometimes those conversations just don't work, or
Right.
the situation is so urgent
Yeah.
that you need to take more drastic action. What does Shell advise for those situations?
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're wrapping up our exploration of the Conscience Code and how to navigate all those ethical dilemmas that just seem to pop up in our work lives.
Yeah, it's a jungle out there.
We've talked about, those external pressures, the pairs,
Right.
and all those internal resources we can draw on to help us make those values-based decisions.
Yeah.
We even unpacked that super handy CLIP framework
Oh, it's so useful.
and those 7 steps
Right.
for having those persuasive ethical conversations.
Those tough conversations.
But now I want to kind of dive into what Shell has to say about ethical leadership.
Okay. Yeah.
It's one thing to handle these situations as, an individual contributor.
Right, as an employee.
But what happens when you're the one in charge?
Right, you're the boss.
What does it take to not just do the right thing yourself, but to inspire others to follow your lead?
That's a great question, and that's where things get really interesting.
Shell makes this really important point that ethical leadership isn't some innate quality that you're just born with.
Right.
It's not like some people have the ethics gene and others
Yeah.
don't.
Right, you either got it or you don't.
It's actually a set of skills and habits that you can develop over time.
So it's not about being a saint.
Right.
It's about being intentional
Exactly.
and developing those leadership muscles.
Yeah, you can practice it.
I like that. So where do we start?
So Shell highlights 3 essential elements:
Okay.
character
Oh,
initiative
got it.
and conflict management skills.
Okay, let's break those down.
Okay.
Let's start with character. Why is that so crucial for ethical leaders?
Well, think about it. Character is really the foundation of trust.
Yeah.
People need to believe that you're a person of integrity,
Yeah.
that you're going to do what's right, even when it's hard,
Right?
and that your actions are going to be consistent with your words.
Yeah.
If there's a disconnect there,
Yeah.
if people sense that you're not being genuine or that you're cutting corners ethically,
Right?
it just
Ah,
erodes their trust.
for sure.
And it makes it so much harder to lead effectively.
That whole walk the walk thing, right?
Exactly. You can't just talk about values. You have to live them.
Totally. You need to be a role model.
All right. Someone that others can look up to
And want to emulate.
and emulate. It makes me think of that story Shell tells about Beth, the nurse,
Oh, yeah.
who worked at a hospital
Right.
that was going through some major changes.
Okay. Yeah. What happened there?
So remember, the new CEO was obsessed with this 20/20 principle:
Oh, yeah.
cutting costs by 20%, increasing revenue by 20%.
Yeah. He was all about the bottom line.
He was all about the numbers.
Right.
And Beth was really concerned about how those cuts were going to impact patient care.
Right. The people who are actually being served.
Exactly. And staff morale.
So did she try to reason with him directly?
She did, but he wasn't receptive to her concern.
Oh, no.
So she took the initiative to go over his head
Ah, wow.
and appeal to the chief nursing officer.
Bold move.
It was a bold move, but she came prepared with facts and figures.
Good for her.
And she made it clear that she was willing to resign if those layoffs went through.
Wow. So she was putting her job on the line.
Yeah, she was putting her job on the line for what she believed in.
That's incredibly brave.
It is. Most people would just kind of grumble and go along with it.
Totally.
But she was willing to take a stand.
That's what initiative looks like in an ethical leader.
Exactly. They don't wait for someone else to solve the problem.
Right. They step up.
They step up, they speak up, they take action.
They take action.
Mm-hmm.
And in Beth's case, her courage paid off.
It did. The chief nursing officer listened.
Good.
And together they were able to persuade the hospital board to intervene.
That's amazing what one person can accomplish.
It is.
When they have the character and the courage to stand up
Exactly.
for what they believe in.
It's inspiring.
So we've got character, initiative. What about that third element, conflict management skills?
Right. So ethical dilemmas often involve conflict.
For sure.
You're going to disagree with people.
Yeah.
You're going to have to challenge assumptions.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to make tough decisions
Right.
that may not please everyone.
Not everybody's going to be happy.
If you shy away from conflict or you just don't know how to manage it effectively,
Yeah.
you're not going to be very effective as an ethical leader.
It's not about being a pushover
Right.
or avoiding conflict altogether.
No, it's about knowing how to have those difficult conversations
Right.
constructively,
Yeah.
respectfully,
Like we were talking about
just like we discussed with those 7 steps.
those 7 steps.
You need to be able to listen to different perspectives,
Right.
empathize with people's concerns,
Yeah.
and try to find common ground.
Common ground.
It's about using your communication skills and your understanding of different conflict management styles to navigate those challenging situations.
It sounds like ethical leadership is really this combination of being a good person,
Yeah, having that strong character.
taking action,
you
and
know.
knowing how to handle all those interpersonal dynamics effectively.
Exactly.
So is there anything else that Shell emphasizes in terms of ethical leadership?
He also talks about the importance of creating a positive work environment.
Okay.
Ethical leaders foster a culture of trust and respect
Right.
and accountability.
They create a space where people feel safe to speak up.
Exactly. Safe to share their ideas
Yeah.
and to challenge the status quo without fear of retribution.
Because ultimately, ethical leadership is about more than just rules and regulations. It's
Right.
about creating a workplace where people feel valued,
Absolutely.
respected,
Yeah.
and empowered to do their best work.
It's about creating that positive environment.
Which brings us to that Native American fable that Shell shares
Oh, yeah.
towards the end of the book.
I love this story.
The story of the 2 wolves. Do you remember that one?
Of course, a classic.
It's a classic story about this internal battle we all have
Right.
between the good wolf,
Representing all our positive quality.
right, and the bad wolf.
Representing the negative ones.
And the old man tells his grandson
Right.
that the wolf that wins is the one you feed.
It's such a powerful image.
Such a powerful reminder that our choices, day by day,
Yeah,
shape who we become,
they really do.
both as individuals and as leaders.
Absolutely. And those choices,
Right.
those small acts of courage and kindness,
Yeah,
they have a ripple effect,
totally.
creating a more positive and ethical environment for everyone around us.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the Conscience Code, I think the key takeaway is that ethical leadership is not some lofty ideal
Right.
that's reserved for, CEOs and world leaders.
For everyone.
It's something that we can all aspire to,
Absolutely.
regardless of our role or position.
It's about making conscious choices,
Yes.
standing up for what we believe in,
Wow.
and creating a work environment
Yeah.
where everyone feels valued and respected.
It's about being the change we want to see in the world.
Absolutely.
So if you're looking for practical guidance and inspiration on how to navigate the ethical landscape of your own work life,
Yeah.
we highly recommend checking out the Conscience Code.
Great book
It's packed with insightful frameworks and compelling stories
and actionable advice.
and actionable advice that will help you to become a more confident and ethical leader.
I love it.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep feeding that good wolf.